Welcome to day 6 of living your happier life. The last 4 days, we've talked about the pillar of the mind, and we learned ways to build new brain circuits and neural pathways for happiness. Now, for the next 4 days, we're going to talk about the foundation for happiness, which is taking responsibility for our happiness. And this is, just like any home needs a solid foundation, our happiness needs a solid foundation, which is taking responsibility for our life. And let's take a look at what I mean by taking responsibility for your happiness. The truth is, you're already doing it. By being here, by taking this program, you are already taking responsibility for your happiness. And by learning the habits of happiness, you're taking this into your own hands. It means taking responsibility means that you're not relying on somebody else to make you happy, or you're not waiting for your circumstances to change so that you can be happy. And I know that the phrase taking responsibility can sound like work, but I promise you that as soon as we let go of the belief that other people or outside circumstances have the power to make or break our happiness, then we're free. That's when we call the shots for our own happiness. So let's start today with a little guided visualization that's going to help you feel your firm, grounded foundation. It's going to help ground you and feel your connection to the earth. So let's first close our eyes and take some nice deep breaths. And as you exhale, every time you exhale, I want you to allow yourself to come into this present moment. Just sort of let go of any of the to-do lists for the day or any conversations that you've had or that you need to have. Just start to call back your energy from any place that you might have left it so that you can be here fully right now. Call it back from other people that you may have given your energy to. Call it back to anything that you're worrying about or thinking about. And as you continue to breathe deeply, bring your awareness to the base of your spine. It's also called your root chakra. And imagine that your breath is coming all the way down to your root chakra. And then imagine a cord going from the base of your spine, going down through the floor beneath you, and down through the soil, and all the way down to the center of the earth. And imagine that cord rooting you into the earth's core, anchoring you. And feel the strength and the empowering energy of Mother Earth coming from beneath you. Feel that energy flowing up from the center of the earth into you, connecting into your root chakra. And with each exhale, just feel any tension or negativity flowing down through your body and dispersing into the ground beneath you. So any worries, they're just draining away. They're being helped by the power of gravity. And the ground beneath you absorbs that and cleanses it. And every time you inhale, imagine that you feel the energy from the center of the earth surging up through the soles of your feet flowing up your body, flowing up all the way to the top of your head. And with that, there's a warmth that takes your whole body. And just sense or experience your connection to Mother Earth. On each inhale, you're breathing up from the earth, feeling the nourishment from Mother Earth coming up through your whole body. And on each exhale, you're breathing away any tensions, allowing the earth to absorb anything you don't want. And the roots are holding you, helping you feel grounded. And take another deep inhale and exhale. And bring your attention back to your whole body. You can stretch out. And when you feel ready, you can slowly open your eyes. Ah, great. Great, great. So, did you feel more grounded? Did you feel like you were able to get a little more present and grounded? You know, this idea of being present. Eckhart Tolle wrote a book, The Power of Now. It's being talked about a lot, but the way that we get present is by bringing our attention to the body and also connecting it to the ground beneath us, not going airy-fairy way up there, but connecting here. You know, there was a study done at Harvard with 5,000 people, and it was found that adults only spend 50% of their time in the present moment. And they also found that when we're in the present moment, we're at our happiest, no matter what it is we're doing. And what I've seen through the people that I've interviewed and talked to and all the research on happiness, I've seen that people are starting to wake up more and more to the power that they have to create their future by everything they feel and say and think and do. And they're recognizing that their choices, in large part, determine their lives, and that we've got to be very present to make good, effective choices. And you know, this idea of our choices affecting our future, it's often referred to as the law of attraction. Perhaps you saw the book or read the book or saw the movie The Secret that I was one of the teachers in. And the law of attraction basically says that based on our thoughts, our words, our feelings, and our actions, we attract to us in great part our circumstances, including we attract, based on all of this, the amount of happiness or unhappiness we have in our life. So what we're going to do is we are going to step into the power that we have to experience deeper happiness. We're going to take that kind of ownership of happiness into our lives. And there's two components to this. The first is to just recognize the idea that happiness is a choice and that you alone have the power to create more of it by shifting your habits. Now, I'm not of the belief that you just, decide to be happy and there you are. I don't believe that. I do believe that it requires these 7 areas that we're going to be talking about in this program, because it's not just about making up your mind, but it is about recognizing that we have the ability to change our happiness. And from the 100 interviews of unconditionally happy people that I conducted for Happy for No Reason, and the thousands since then, not one person questioned their ability to be happy. They absolutely knew that it was possible, and they knew that their happiness was up to them. They did not wait for luck. They did not wait for everything to be perfect, for all the conditions in their life to be perfect in order to be happy. In fact, I believe that we create our luck by raising our happiness set point. Happy people are much more likely to have happier relationships, to have greater happiness at work and better success. Happy people don't get stuck. They don't get stuck in the past thinking that I can't be happy because of my childhood or what's happened to me. They are proactive and they focus on the possibilities in their future rather than being victimized by their past or their present circumstances, and they just respond differently. They're in the driver's seat of their own life. Now, the second component of taking ownership or responsibility for your happiness is the ability to respond to all of the events in your life in a way that supports your happiness. Our ability to respond, responsibility, to what happens to us, our ability to respond to what happens to us has really a dramatic impact on our experience. It really can basically give you, okay, I'm just not going to say that sentence. Okay, our ability to respond, our ability to respond. All right.
That seems like a better
Yeah, okay.
place.
I'm just going to go faster through it and not say all those words. Okay. The second component of taking ownership for your happiness is responding to all of the events in your life in a way that supports your happiness. It's your ability to respond. That's why it's called responsibility. It's your ability to respond to what happens that changes your life. Now, years ago, my mentor was Jack Canfield, and he taught me a formula that I use to this day. It's a simple formula about responsibility. And the formula is this: E plus R equals O. It stands for events plus response equals outcome. It is not just the events in our life that determine our happiness or our outcome. It's the events plus our responses to them. And let me give you a couple of examples of this. If I were to go up to you and say, "You are the biggest jerk that I have ever met," do you think that that's going to hurt your self-esteem? Well, you might be saying yes, but the reality is no. That's not what's going to affect your self-esteem. What's going to affect your self-esteem is how you respond to that statement of mine. So if I say, "You're the biggest jerk I've ever met," you've got a couple of choices. You could either say, "Gee, Marcy, how did you find that out about me so fast?" Or you could say, "Well, that's not accurate. Obviously, something's wrong in the way Marcy's perceiving me. Let me find out why she thinks that." The difference between how you respond is based on how you feel about yourself. I'm going to give you another example of this to point that out. If I were to go up to you and say, "You have purple hair," what would you say? You're going to go, "No, I don't. I don't have purple hair." You're going to go, "Something's wrong with your vision, Marcy," right? And that's because you deeply know you don't have purple hair. It's the same with the example of me telling you that you're the biggest jerk I've ever met. If you know that you are not a jerk, you're going to respond by going, "That's odd. I wonder why she thinks that." But it's not going to affect you because you know the truth. And this ability to respond determines whether we show up in life as a victim in life or a victor in life. Now, no matter how awful our circumstances, no matter what people are saying to you, no matter how hopeless you think things might be, you are always free to make the choice to stop playing the role of victim in life. There really are there are two kinds of people. There are victims or victors. Victors take responsibility. And I was first introduced to this idea of a victim or victor in life when I read a book in high school that was an assignment in high school. It was called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist. He was a Holocaust survivor who wrote with incredible eloquence about how he was able to find love and meaning even while he was in the midst of enduring the horrors of being a prisoner in a Nazi concentration camp. And there was one particular passage in that book that I want to read to you. It's in Happy for No Reason. And he said, "We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts, comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." Wow. Now that's what I call being a victor and not a victim. And what a very fitting name for him. His name was Viktor Frankl. And I have to say that after reading that, I realized that if he could find meaning and love, even in the worst circumstances imaginable, then I have to believe that we all can find the courage to be a victor in our own life. And I want to share with you another story. This is about a woman named Ariel Gilbert, and I interviewed Ariel for Happy for No Reason. And Ariel is a nurse, and this happened, I think, about 30 years ago. She used to work at the local hospital where I live, Marin General Hospital. And one day after work, she was going home from work, and it was a long day, and her eyes were burning, and she decided to stop into a local drugstore to pick up some eye drops. And so when she got home, as soon as she got home, she opened up the eye drops and she put them in her eyes. Within seconds, she felt a searing pain, and she just screamed. And within about 15 minutes, she couldn't see. So she called 911, and she was rushed back to the hospital, the same hospital where she had just come from work. She was still in her nursing uniform. And the doctors examined her, and they told her that somehow the eye drops that she had put in had been laced with lye, and that she would probably never see again. And after 2 days, they told her for sure that she would not see again. And her life was turned upside down. And she became incredibly depressed. She had, been she thought she'd been a very happy person before. She'd been very active and very happy. And she just sunk into a deep, deep depression. And for the next 9 months, she basically just laid in bed. And one morning she woke up and she had this thought, if I keep on like this, which was just thinking my life is over, if I keep on like this, what's my life going to look like when I'm 60 or 70 years old? And she hated the thought of it. And she said, okay, well, I've got to do something about this. This is the way it is. I've wallowed long enough. I can't wallow any longer. I've got to continue with my life. Otherwise, my life is going to be horrible. And she remembered seeing people with guide dogs. And so she said she rolled over in bed and she reached for the telephone and she called information and she asked them to connect her with the guide dogs for the blind. And she ended up having a purpose. She got out of bed, she got trained, she had to go to school first and learn Braille, that was one of the requirements, and ultimately she got herself a dog, and she became so inspired that she did more. She had been a rower before all of this had happened, and she ended up joining the Paralympic rowing team, and she became an Olympic rower. She actually one year ran with the Olympic torch, and now she runs the volunteer program for the Guide Dogs for the Blind. And here are some pictures of her because I just want you to see what an extraordinary inspiration she is. There's Ariel with a couple of her dogs, and she's rowing. And I just want to share with you her thoughts. This is how it appeared in Happy for No Reason, because it's, she said to me, Marcy, she says, before I lost my sight, I considered myself a really happy person. Yet today I'm happier than I was before on a more consistent basis and from a more meaning-filled place. I am taking responsibility for my own life and take charge of my own happiness. And it's created a deeper sense of contentment and peace that I feel in my life than I've ever had before. That's paraphrased, but that's the basic idea. And she said, although I lost my sight, my vision has become greater. And I think, wow, quite an inspiration. So Ariel, she is taking responsibility for her life. So let us, no matter what we have going on in our lives, let us take more responsibility. And let's look at a way that we can empower ourselves to show up more like a victor in life rather than a victim, by looking at some of the patterns of victims. There are 3 basic negative patterns that show up when we're playing the victim. And we're going to look at these over the next 3 days, but I want to give you an overview of them. And they are all happiness-robbing behaviors. So the first pattern is the pattern of blaming. That's either blaming other people or blaming your circumstances for your life, or making excuses. It's the I can't be happy because my husband is so negative, or if only my job were different, then I'd be happier. In these cases, what you're doing is you're giving away your power, you're giving away your happiness. And we've been trained that when something doesn't work, we blame it rather than take responsibility. And we need to reframe that. The blamer's motto is, it's not my fault. So by the way, you may recognize some of these in some of your behaviors or the people around you. So the second victim behavior is shaming. And the shamer's motto, shaming is basically like self-blame. And the shamer's motto is, it's all my fault. I'm embarrassed, I'm ashamed, I shouldn't have done those things, or I feel guilty. It's really about blaming yourself for something. It could be, I feel so ashamed of my body, or I'm ashamed that I went and said those things, or I'm ashamed at how I've let myself be treated so poorly in relationships. It's that self-critic. And so it takes up a lot of our energy and it blocks our happiness. So finally, our third pattern, the third pattern of victim, is complaining. And you know what that sounds like. The complainer is, their motto is poor me. It's being a martyr. It's being an overgiver. It's trying to get sympathy. It's complaining, about everything around. I give so much and nobody gives back. And it keeps you focused on what you don't want. And we know from the law of attraction that focusing on what's wrong in our life is only going to bring us more of that. So we want to focus on not complaining, the opposite of complaining. Go up. No, go down. I don't want to say all those things. I'll say some of that. So complaining on things like, I'm not making enough money, or I'm complaining I can never find the right man, or complaining about, I never get treated well in relationships. All of this complaining is like putting an order into the universe for more of what you don't want. So I've had the experience, I have friends who actually see energy. They can see the energetic body around you. And they tell me that when they see people who are being really negative, who are blaming, shaming, or complaining, that there's kind of a dark, murky energy around them. But when they see people who are taking responsibility and living in gratitude and being positive, they see a radiant light energy around them. So this all ends up in our energy field. Now, I want to tell you a short story about a guy who I think was a little bit of the victim behavior, an example of a guy who was in the victim behavior. It was about a guy who was a construction worker, and one morning he went to work at his new job, and he took his lunch with him in his lunchbox, and he worked really hard that morning, and the lunch bell rang, and he went over and sat with the other workers to eat his lunch, and he opened up his lunchbox, and he took out his sandwich, and he unwrapped it, and he said, "Oh, peanut butter? I hate peanut butter sandwiches. Ugh." But then he goes ahead and he eats the peanut butter sandwich. Well, the next day, the same thing happens. The lunch bell rings. He goes over and sits down with his coworkers. He opens up his lunchbox. Out comes the sandwich. And he says, "I can't believe it. Again, another peanut butter sandwich. I hate this." Well, this goes on day after day after day until one day he comes to lunch. He sits down with everybody. He opens up his lunchbox and he takes out his sandwich and he says, "Another peanut butter sandwich. I can't stand these." And finally, one of the guys can't take it anymore. And he says, "Look, if you don't like peanut butter, why don't you just ask your wife to make you a different kind of sandwich?" And the guy says, "My wife? What do you mean my wife? I'm not married. I make my own sandwiches." Now that's an example of a victim. And we do it in subtle ways, and we do it in not so subtle ways. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a look at where these behaviors might be showing up in your life. There's no time like the present to take a look at this. So I'd like you to grab your happiness workbook and turn to today's section, and you're going to see a sentence completion exercise there. And it lists 4 different sentences to complete. The first one is, something or someone I blame is. And it could be something like, something or someone I blame is my partner for making me late, or my mother for feeding me so much sugar as a kid that I got addicted to it. And then the second sentence is, a way I shame myself is. And it may be, a way that I shame myself is by judging myself about my aging skin, or a way I shame myself is by thinking I should be a better writer. And then the third sentence completion is something I complain about is. And it could be something I complain about is that I have too much to do, or I'm just too busy to relax, or something I complain about is what's happening in my country. So different things like that. Now the last one is, if I were to take a little more responsibility for my happiness, I would. Now that's a really good one. If I were to take a little more responsibility for my happiness, so for example, if I were to take more responsibility for my happiness, I would meditate more regularly. Or I would take some time to go learn the piano that I've been in my heart to do for 8 years. All right, so you get the idea. There is a space for you, and I want you to list out 3 or 4 examples for each of those sentences. And so either you can pause this video for a few minutes right now, or you can come back to this at the end of this video, but I do want you to do that. All right, so the reason I want you to do that is that awareness is the first step. I am going to tell you about an experience when my eyes were opened about my own victim patterns and how I had to become aware of them. This happened years ago. I was taking a workshop where we played what's called the blame, shame, and complain game. And here's how it worked. Anyone who acted like a victim, anytime any of us acted like a victim, we had to put $1 in a bowl in the front of the room. And this was any time that we blamed anybody, or we made an excuse, or we tried to justify our behavior, or anytime we complained, or we beat ourselves up. And let me tell you, I had a wake-up call. Yeah, I had already been teaching these ideas for years and years and years, and I thought, I'm going to be really good at this stuff. And, I teach this. I got to be really good at this. So we all got $20 worth of $1 bills. And this was a 4-day workshop, and I thought, no problem. I'm not going to use up half of this. Well, the very first day, $13 gone. I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I've got 3 more days of this, and I only have $7 left. I mean, I was saying things like, oh, it's so cold in here. I can't believe how cold they keep these training rooms. Well, do you know how many hours I've spent in training rooms like that? Do you know I should have known better? I should actually take responsibility to bring enough sweaters so that I'm not cold. I spent the whole workshop emptying out my wallet. I had to go back to the front desk and break another $20 bill. Day 2 came, and it was only $7 gone. And by day 3, I think it was like $4, and by the 4th day, only $1. What happened was, I had not been aware of my habit of blaming, shaming, and complaining, and become so automatic that I was unconscious of doing it. And by the end of the 4 days, I had become so much more conscious about it. And those dollars that I paid into that bowl were a really small price to pay for learning how much I was still playing the victim. And I tell you, I was not alone. By the end of the 4 days, the entire room, we had a bowl filled to the brim. It was a very big bowl, and we ended up giving the money to a local charity. So, of course, you know what I'm going to have you do. Here is your homework assignment. For the next 4 days, I want you to play the blame, shame, and complain game for yourself, and I want you to see what happens. So get a bunch of $1 bills. You might want to get 30 of them, and get a bowl or a jar. And every time you notice yourself blaming, shaming, or complaining, you go put that dollar in the jar. Now, if you have kids or family or coworkers, do it with them. I recommend you do it, one with your family, one with your team at work. You can tell them that you're taking a happiness course. You can blame it on me. That won't count as $1 for blaming. You can blame it on me. And at the end of the 4 days, what you do is you donate it to your favorite charity. Make it a win-win. So I'm going to end today's session with a quote by someone that I have long, long admired, and that is the beautiful and the brilliant Maya Angelou, who said, "If you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. Don't complain." So have a great rest of your day, taking your happiness in your own hands and being a victor of your life. I will see you tomorrow.